All right, we'll now call this meeting to order for the City of Walton Council meeting, March 10th. If you all will, please stand for the invocation and salute the flag. Heavenly Father, thank you for another day with breath in our lungs, love in our hearts. Lord, we ask that you will allow us, grant us the strength and wisdom and the courage to make the best decisions for the City of Walton. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if I can I please get a roll call?
Barb?
Here.
Terry?
Here.
Bobby?
Here.
Rose?
Here.
Stephanie?
Here.
Matt?
Here. Okay. A few quick announcements. April 7th, we will have a caucus meeting at 6:30 at City Hall. April 11th will be an Easter egg hunt, Walton City Park at 2 p.m. April 14th will be a planning meeting at 6:15 at City Hall, followed by the City Council meeting here at the Senior Center at 7 p.m. If I could I please get an approval of the agenda?
Motion.
Second.
Barb?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes. Okay, and if I could I please get an approval of the previous minutes for February 4th caucus meeting?
Motion. Second.
You want to go through all three of them, or we want to band all three of them together?
Going all together.
Motion. All of them together. Second.
Barb?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Okay.
If I could have a second. Motion to call a special council meeting March 18th, 7 p.m.
Second.
Rose?
Before we do that, what is the purpose of the meeting, or should be on the agenda?
It's the city handbook policies and procedures.
Okay,
And be in City Hall.
thank you.
What was it, 7?
That's Thursday, right?
Yes, ma'am. Or Wednesday, sorry. Wednesday, 18th.
Day after St. Patty's Day.
So is it Wednesday or Thursday?
Wednesday next week.
Wednesday.
You ready?
I wrote down Thursday.
Barb?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Bobby?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Citizens' comments. Allie? Nothing? All right, from the Sheriff's Department, Major Bill Mark.
Evening, good to see you all again tonight. I've already passed out the Sheriff's Department monthly activity report to the council members. For the benefit of your audience, the Sheriff's Department handled 1,107 law enforcement events in the city of Walton in the month of February. Some of those include 2 911 hang-ups, we responded to 16 alarm drops, 4 attempts to locate, investigated 18 auto accidents, which is a significant decrease from 23 in January, and January was down from December, so it's been a good winter for all of your residents. Took 1 burglary report, did 23 business checks, served 68 criminal or civil services, 2 criminal mischief reports, 7 domestics, 8 reports of drunk or intoxicated individuals, 3 emotional crises, 3 juvenile trouble. We assisted 15 motorists, responded to 1 overdose, 7 requests for information, 555 spot checks, 23 suspicious activity reports, 5 theft reports, 22 traffic complaints, 133 traffic stops, which resulted in 71 citations, 22 vacation checks, 11 vehicle complaints. We unlocked 15 cars, checked for 17 wanted persons, and ultimately made 15 arrests. But you notice the citations were up a lot over January, with the weather being kind of unseasonably nice for February, and we have additional state highway traffic funding for overtime. We started a little more overtime traffic enforcement off the state grant than we would normally have in a typical February. All right, thank you all.
Real quick, if nobody from council has any questions. Major Mark, with the growing popularity of the St. Joe's fish fry during the Lent season on Friday, it's real good fish, but it's causing a traffic problem up there. Is that something that we could have a sheriff's deputy up there directing traffic or helping with that, or
That
is
is a responsibility of the church. to
that
do
would be the
Yes, it
responsibility
is.
of the
That's
church?
the same for every other parish in the county that has a fish fry. And if they have the need for traffic control, what they'll typically do is arrange to hire an off-duty deputy if it involves traffic control on a city street or state highway. And if they need, they have to do their own parking personnel on the lot.
Okay, all right.
If they don't want to do that, like if Gabe, asked them nicely, if they don't want to do that, is there any way for us to like nudge them a little bit to?
I'll leave that up to you. But, and really, I guess it kind of depends on what type of traffic problems it causes on the state
A lot of
highways.
it's the common sense stuff up there that people will.
They're blocking the
They'll make the
intersection.
turn after when they know they shouldn't, and then it blocks traffic.
Yeah. And sometimes,
And
it
that's
just,
the thoroughfare for them guys.
it can be resolved with, just some, maybe revising their parking procedures. We had a similar problem with IHM in Burlington just a couple weeks ago, if you were up at IHM. And what they did was, they just kind of rerouted their customers and were running them through the Boone Woods Park, just to see if that alleviated the problem, because they're having the same problem that was back in the whole Kentucky 18.
Yeah, they had a sheriff there last Friday.
Did they?
Yeah.
Later on, they did?
No, before 4:30, when I left work, there was a sheriff at the entrance to Boone Woods.
Oh, you're talking, okay.
At IHM.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I didn't see one up there, but it's one of the best fish sandwiches I've ever had in my entire life.
That's why it's so popular.
But,
There's so many people
exactly,
that
but,
no way.
it's, okay, I just wanted to know how to proceed with that, so thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
I don't have anything. Anybody else?
Thank you, sir.
All right. Mr. Allier with the fire department.
Good evening. In the month of February, the fire department responded to 115 incidents. Of those 115, 49 of them were in the Walton city limits. 42 of those incidents were EMS-related type incidents. The other very few were electrical, equipment problems, dispatch and cancel their route, authorized control turning, and one alarm activation. It was an unintentional accident. Been a pretty slow month for the fire department. EMS wise is probably always our biggest volume driver. We are prepared. It is starting to get into the brush fire season. The county has seen quite an increase in some of the brush fires that are getting away from people. It typically happens this time of the year. The weather starts to dry up a little bit. It's a little windy. The sun comes out, dries everything up really quick. We encourage people to follow the forestry's rules. It is in effect with their burn ban. Anybody can go on their website to see what all is included in that. Basically, it's the hours of 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. is when they recommend you do any kind of burning. There are limitations on what you can burn. It can only be fallen tree, brush, type stuff like that. It cannot be any man-made wood, small products, garbage, or anything like that. They recommend 150 feet away from any woodland structure or any building, and obviously be aware of the wind that day. The windy days, and we recommend not at all. That's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Yep. Mr. Hollier. All right. Cardinal Engineer, Matt Bowden.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I checked in with Dunrob and Associates, how everything was going with the easements on the High Street Bridge project. They are close to having the title research done. The railroad right-of-way was the biggest challenge because the right-of-way dated back to the 1800s, and they had to trace the paper trail all the way back and try to find something to cover that whole time as best they could. The appraisal should be ready this week. As soon as they're ready, they'll send copies to me and to the city for review before we give them the notice to start actually negotiating with the property owners. They've also at least reached out to Norfolk Southern and found the right contact person who they will deal with when it comes time for that. So it's not time to actually sit down and meet with them yet. They know they've got the right person, so hopefully that'll save them some time on the front end. I sent the traffic management plan to the state for review. The traffic section came back with some comments just about signage on Main Street mostly, and changing the positioning of some signs on High Street on the other side. Still waiting on some comments from construction, but I've already addressed the one that we do get. And then I met on site with Duke Energy to look at the electric just to make sure they didn't have any concerns. They didn't see any issues with the existing overhead electric, if we would need to relocate anything, do anything crazy to accommodate the bridge. I also mentioned that we were considering adding some roadway lighting just to help with the bridge, help visibility around the bridge. They didn't see an issue with that, as well as the electric service drops for the lifts. So when we get closer to putting that in, we'll get back in touch with them. Get that, which we'll just need to get an agreement from them for lighting and all that. For the Splash Park project, Mayor Brown, Councilman McDonald and Brown, myself met with Johnny Kane from Bluegrass Recreation last month just to go over the project. We put together a couple concepts, different configurations of equipment, and just to talk about location and the utility needs that we would have for it. So, excuse me, the two setups that he said were estimated at $99,735 and $125,208, and that's the pad, the water features, and then the control system, the manifold, the electrical control locks, drainage, all that. The city would just be responsible for preparing the site for them, grading, any sidewalk connections, and then stubbing out the utilities to the control structure. So we will be probably getting with him in the next few months and fine tuning that. Just get the site work finalized. Sharon had asked for me to bring in a copy of the utility maps, the water and sewer maps, the Cardinal Danham file to put up on the whiteboard at City Hall. When I was doing this, I realized that the maps had not been updated since 2005, so they were missing quite a bit of the recent development in the city. So we're working on getting all those up to date. The maps, as we did have were over there now, just so you guys need reference, but getting them to the current layout of the city. I did want to ask for kind of getting ahead of this for the future, if the city would consider updating their development policy, that whenever we have any kind of new development, whether that's residential, industrial, whatever, to have them provide us a set of, provide Cardinal a CAD file with as-built for the water and sewer and whatnot when it's completed. That way I can keep updating that map as we get it. I don't have to go, come down to the engineer after the fact and try to patch that together. So it'll definitely save a lot of time and money on our end, staying up with the records and keeping something, a nice digital file. And then, excuse me, the last couple of months, we had some discussions with the American Legion about some drainage issues they've had crop up since the industrial park has been built. We met out there with VOX and VOX, the engineer of the project, just to kind of look at what's been happening and what we can do about it. VOX was going to go back and talk to the contractor out there and the Development Association about putting in some drainage, or set up some drains along the edge of the parking lot, cleaning up the slope where it's a little bit rough from the grading, just getting things cleaned up. And I think you said that they did show up at the last meeting with a plan. We talked about it. Okay. All right. So they at least seemed like they were pretty, willing to work with us and make everybody happy. Just push off on the city or on the concrete convention, so appreciate their efforts. So, does anybody have any questions?
Real quick, just to add on the utility map updates, Matt, it just occurred to me as you were speaking that I neglected to get back to you on your email. Roger and I were discussing this yesterday. We're going to start requesting when people send us site phase plans, things of that nature, that they also give us a digital copy, something that we can upload to the computer. That way we can bring up site plans and, if anybody's been in the small closet in council chambers, it's stuffed plumb full, and Public Works building's not much better. In regards to continuing on with, doing surveying to come up with a updated master of sewer plan, that's what I meant to get back to you on, is probably want to hold off on that because we've got two major sewer projects and a southern water line connection that we're currently working on that we hope to have done within the next year. So we'll probably hold off, or at least hold off on doing any surveying to update everything until, so we don't have to do it twice. But it does need to be done.
Okay, yeah, at the very least, when I was talking to VOX and VOX about the American Legion, I asked if they could send me a digital copy of their plans for Phase A and Phase B, so I can at least incorporate that. It's the older stuff, or stuff that happened 10 years ago or so that I can try to reach out to Carling and some of the other.
It's always the usual suspects.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So-
not anything, anybody crazy from across the country. But,
Right.
I can probably get some stuff to piece it together.
Yeah. But along with the usual suspects, we're gonna kind of say, tell them all, hey, submit a digital copy as well.
Okay, yeah, that'll make sense.
All right.
I was down here at the Walton 25.
Oh, sorry, I didn't bring that up. Yeah,
Putting in forms this week.
the pole bases are installed, or at least, I don't know, 2 to 4, 3 to 4. So, yeah, the next couple of weeks, we should see the poles going up and the spans. Just to give you guys a heads up, after the state installs it in Frankfurt, we need to come up and inspect it, and then they'll need to, the state will need to get the agreement signed with Duke before they can activate and actually get power to it. So don't be alarmed or anything when everything is installed, looks like it's good to go, and it's not actually turned on.
Signs hanging to the sides, or
Right,
whatever
yeah,
they
yeah,
do,
the-
they tie them
the
up or
single
whatever.
fence, yeah, pull aside and all
That'll
that
give
stuff.
everybody a little time to get used to it.
Yeah, and they should, they'll probably put up message boards saying, new traffic pattern ahead or something, just to kind of get the public prepared for it, so it's not just off and then on. No back and forth. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you, Matt. All right. Next, we'll go with everybody's favorite topic. We've got an audit presentation, Mr. John Chamberlain from Van Gorder Walker.
Thank you very much. I'm going to sit here so I can see your strong faces.
That's fine. Would you like me?
Is it on?
That mic's not
Mic's
working.
dead anyway.
It doesn't work?
It's not, I think your batteries are dead.
Nothing works around here anyway.
You don't give them this.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right, thank you very much. I feel like if I sit here, it's supposed to nod off, I can throw something. It's got to do Anyway, my name's John Chamberlain. I'm a CPA and partner at Van Gorder Walker and Company in Erlander, and we're a CPA firm that specializes in governmental accounting and auditing. And so this is our bailiwick. This is what we do, and we appreciate the opportunity to continue to do this for the city of Walton. You should have about 4 things there in front of you. From me. There's a slide presentation, there's 2 letters, and then the financial statements themselves. And I'll just start with the slide presentation, the second slide, where I talk about the opinion. And our opinion is an unmodified opinion, that the financial statements are fairly presented. And that means no modifications are required to make them fairly presented, so that's a good thing. And that's the highest opinion that we give. So it means your financial statements, as far as we're concerned, are free of material misstatements. The next slide shows assets and cash comparison for governmental funds. And this is comparative over about the last 7 years. And you can see there you have a cash balance of about $1.6 million in the governmental funds. That's down about $158,000 from last year. But we use a little rule of thumb in government, and that is to have about 1 quarter's worth of operating expenses on hand in cash. So 1 quarter's worth to the city would be about $350,000. That's where that little red arrow is. You've got about 14 months of coverage. So the city of Walton is in a very strong cash position for the governmental funds. The next slide is proprietary funds. This is your water and sewer fund. Again, down just slightly, about $65,000 from last year. And again, that little rule of thumb for you guys for that fund would be about $476,000. You have about $2.8 million in cash and in investments. And so, again, 17 months of coverage there. So again, solid cash position for both of those fund groups. The next slide is just long-term liabilities comparison for your governmental activities. This is for your general fund, park fund, anything like that. And the red is any type of long-term debt. And really the only long-term debt that you have currently in the general fund is your compensated absences for employees. So that's just what you would owe them if all your employees left today. Type thing. And it comes up about $30,000. It's not much. And then the orange is the OPEB and pension liability. That's from the SERS liabilities that we put the pension on in 2015. And then we put the OPEB liability, the other post-employment benefits, the health insurance, we put that on about 2 years ago. And so you see how that It decreased just slightly this year, so that's a good sign. The total liability decreased just slightly. That's not a liability that someone's going to send you a bill for. You know, you're not going to pay off $490,000. But the way they claw that back is basically through higher SERS percentage premiums, you know, throughout the year. So all of your non-hazardous employees will have a higher SERS rate. So just get used to that. That's a bigger part of your budget, and it continues to grow until those numbers start shrinking. Water sewer fund. So the red is long-term debt for bonds. You can see that steps down very gradually each year. You've been making your payments. Decreased about $164,000 from last year to this year. And so that's good. You did have, there are a little bit of compensated absences that sit in that fund as well for the employees that are part of that fund. And then the OPEB and pension liability in that fund as well, obviously for your employees, because you have employees that are kind of dedicated to that fund, or a portion of them are dedicated to that fund. Next slide is just revenues versus expenditures for governmental funds. And this looks like a ride at Kings Island or something. But the green are your revenues, the red are your expenditures. And I want to point out in 2018 and 2019, you did significant amounts of capital expenditures, road work, that type of thing. So you can see there, that red arrow, or the red triangle that I had at the bottom down there, that's where you would be without your $463,000 of capital expenditures this year. So your capital expenditures, you can kind of go 1 year and not make them, you know, that type of thing. So I like to call them not necessarily optional, but you don't have to always make them when you make them. So you can see there, without your capital expenditures, your delta there, your difference between revenues and expenses is pretty good size. So even with the $463,000 in capital expenditures, you still have a $56,000 net income. So good job. Next slide is revenues from all governmental fund sources. About $1.4 million. That's up about 23% from last year. Licenses and permits, by far the largest. These are payroll taxes, anything like that, occupational license. Your taxes are your second line item, so that's good for a small city. It means your visitors to town are paying for most of your expenses, so that's good then. Intergovernmental, about $687,000, and then sale of assets, $463,000. Those numbers, there's something wrong with those numbers.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, those numbers aren't right. So let's move on from that slide. Something didn't translate in that slide very well. I will, because I know the sale of assets is $127,000. So something's not right there. I'll take another look at that when we get back to work on the financial services. Total expenditures of $1.4 million. General government $687,000. Capital outlay at $463,000. Streets, public works, and parks. The next few slides are just year over year, kind of the last 7 years. It shows kind of a comparison. Most of these are, as you can see, general government increased just slightly. Public works is pretty much the same year over year. That's good. Capital outlay, you see that slide where two significant jumps in 18 and 19. We made significant road projects. Water sewer fund expenditures the last couple of years, and then that service fund. Let me just walk you through the financial statements quickly, just get an understanding of where everything is there. Page 2 and 3 is the audit opinion. Pages 4 through 10 is financial management's discussion and analysis. I liken this to an executive summary of the financial statements. It's comparative with last year. And so that should be a good thing for you, especially if you're a new council member. It'd be a good place to start. It's your fiduciary responsibility to understand the financial statements of your city. So that's probably a good place to start off. Page 11 is the statement of net position. And this is what we call a government-wide statement of net position, in that it includes long-term fixed assets and long-term debt. So you see there, we have governmental activities and business activities in columns, and then a total column on the right-hand side. Total assets and deferred outflows related to pensions for the governmental, right at $9 million, right at $13 million for the water and sewer, for a total of almost $22 million for the city. Again, $1.6 million of that in cash for the governmental funds, and about $2.8 million for the water sewer. So a total of right at $4.4 million in cash. Current liabilities. Your current liabilities are the accounts payables down to accrued interest payable, customer deposits, that kind of thing. So those are relatively small. Those are relatively consistent from year to year. Your non-current liabilities, those are the compensated absences that we mentioned earlier, really about $47,000 across the city in both governmental and water sewer. And then the net pension liability right at $962,000 for the entire city. Due in more than 1 year, that's the long-term portion of your debt. That's all the water sewer fund at $1.6 million. So total liabilities, deferred inflows of $3.3 million. I do want to point out one thing on here because it's confusing. The deferred outflows, the net pension liability, and the deferred inflows. Those numbers are all related to each other. They're all part of that pension calculation that's required to be on your financial statements. And if you really want to, they're kind of actuarial numbers, and you can almost look at those numbers in net if you want to help understand how they function year to year. So remember, assets on one side, liabilities on the other side. So assets minus liabilities, $21 million of assets, almost $22 million of assets, minus your $3.3 million of liabilities is $18 million of net position. The vast majority of your liabilities invested in capital assets, obviously. So roads, water, sewer. Let's go on over to page 13. This is the balance sheet for the governmental funds. It's broken down between your 3 governmental funds: the general fund, municipal roadway fund, and the park fund. And you see total assets there, almost all cash. There's a few receivables, but almost all cash at $1.9 million. Total assets. Total current liabilities of $37,000, and then assets minus liabilities is your fund balance. So total fund balance of all your governmental funds are all positive. So $1.9 million in total. At the bottom of that page, there's a quick and easy reconciliation to reconcile that balance sheet over to that statement of net position if you're an accountant like page 14 is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. This is the fund income statement for the organization, again broken down by your 3 major governmental funds. So you see there the total revenues of $1.4 million in revenues, $1.4 million in total expenditures, and there's your revenues that should have been on that other slide. I don't know what was messing up because the first couple were right. $459,000 in licenses and permits, $497,000 in taxes, about $166,000 in intergovernmental revenues, and sale of assets of $127,000. Where are those other numbers from? So revenues minus expenditures, $56,000 in the positive. So that's good. Page 16 is just a breakdown of the statement of net position for the proprietary fund, and we kind of already went over that on the other, on the first one. Page 17 is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for the proprietary fund. This is the income statement for that fund. So total operating revenues for your water sewer, right at $2 million. Operating expense, $2,085,000. Operating income, right at negative $44,000. Water tower rental, interest income, interest expense, and then the non-cash share of pension and OPEB expense there at $59,000. So you have about $118,000 negative change in net position, but almost $60,000 of that is non-cash. So just and not including the depreciation earlier, it's non-cash pension. So it's really a pretty good position there. Nothing to sweat about that small. Page 18, I usually don't go over the statement of cash flows in detail except to tell you that when we look at a statement of cash flows, the first thing I look at is your operating cash, cash provided by operating activities. For a water sewer fund, that number should be a very solid positive. And yours is $444,000. That means your operating utility is making money through operations. And that's what it should be. Page 19 through 36 are the notes to the financial statements. And I'm just going to point out a couple of notes in here, so kind of turn fast with me. Page 24 and 25 are your fixed asset schedules. They show the additions to your fixed assets. They also show the depreciation being taken. And any retirements, reclassifications. The bottom of page 25 and 26 is a summary of the long-term debt that's in your water sewer fund. And starting on page 26, droning on for about 11, 12 pages, through pages 35 is your SERS notes. So that tells you all about the SERS and the pension and medical support benefits. Everything you want to know about the page 36, note L, there is a note here on tax abatements. So when the city gives a tax abatement for an enterprise, any enterprise in the city, that now has to be disclosed in your notes in your financial statements. So those are in there. And that's relative in this bit. Page 37 is the budgetary comparison schedule. So this is how you perform to your budget. The first column is your original budget. The second column is any amendments to that budget. You make no amendment to your budget. The third column is your final budget. The fourth column over is your actual revenues and actual expenditures. And then the fifth column over is a variance column, which shows you how well each of those line items perform to budget. And you see there $301,000 in revenue in a favorable position, and $301,000 more than you budgeted. So you're budgeting your revenues conservatively and exceeding that. And then in the outflows, there is, I hate to say this, there is an error in two of those lines. Those should be positive numbers because your outflows are significantly less than your budget. So those should be positives. Sorry about that.
Are you talking the 101, 560,
Yeah, the
and 131?
560 and 131, 756.
So those are actually positives.
Those are actually positive numbers.
Okay.
That should happen automatically. So that should be a positive number. And because you can see the total number of $1.5 million budgeted expenditures and $1.3 million actual expenditures. So you are indeed $184,000 under what you budgeted. Sorry about that. but good management of budget as a rule of thumb. The next page is the municipal road aid fund. It's a similar type setup, and there were, you had some transfers in that you budgeted that you didn't make. That's not such a big deal there, and then you expended less than what you budgeted. Park fund, same deal here, budgeted transportation fund that you didn't receive, and then operating transfers, you transferred in from the budget and then expended less than the budget. So, same stuff. Page 40 and 41 is a required 10-year schedule for your pension and your other post-employment benefits. The first schedule is for your pensions for non-hazardous employees. So that's getting filled in over time. And you'll notice that the top line says 2018 because that is the year of measurement. Remember, your pensions are all a year behind. So when we're doing your June 30th, 2019 audit, your pensions in here are actually being measured June 30th, 2018. So next year, 19 and 20. Page 42 and 43 is required to fill in internal control requirements. Had no segregation of duties problems, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that were required to report in your internal controls, and then also no issues with non-compliance. So the last thing I want to talk about, it's pretty much a good audit report. I'm very pleased with that. Last thing I want to talk about are the two letters that are there in front of you. The longer one, the 4-page one, is what's called a governance letter. This is to the city council. This is a required report, a required letter. It's required by our profession that we communicate directly to you as the governing body to tell you about any problems, any issues that the city may have. And so we do mention some estimates that are taken and things like that for the pension. On page 2 near the bottom, we mention corrected misstatements. So these are things, corrections that we had to make. Those are actually pretty significant corrections, and so that really is the rest of my discussion is going to kind of be in that realm. So that's what I'm going to go to next. The rest of this letter mentions internal control and also mentions additional. So the management letter, the shorter letter, is a 2-page letter, and it has 4 items. And a couple of the items are small and things that I don't particularly want to get into. But number 1 and number 3 are really the 2 things that I want to look at, because with new accounting, new government accounting standards, there's new independence standards that have been issued over the last few years, and every time a new independence standard is issued, it gets more stringent. And we used to walk into a city like Walton and get something not much more than a checkbook, and we would create a set of financial statements and say, here you are, we're the experts and we do it up really pretty for you, and say, here you are, these are your financials for you. That is not acceptable any longer for city governments, for municipal, for any kind of government. And any of you have experienced in other governments, you know this, that what you have to maintain your own financial statements. You have to own your financial statements. You have to understand and know someone at the city has to know and understand your financial statements. Now that person can be a staff person, that person can be an external accountant that you hire, but it really should not be. And so we are making way too many adjustments. We had audit adjustments from 16, 17, and 18 that needed to be made, that had to be made. And these are, when you come in, you're basically, trial balance, my fund balance from last year on your QuickBooks should match my financial statement. And that's the first thing we look at. Open the door and say, oh, does this match? If that doesn't match, I'm like, okay, why doesn't it match? And there's a handful of reasons why it doesn't match. When I have to go back and say, okay, I have to make all 16's entries, and all 17's entries, and all 18's entries, and all 19's entries to make it match, that's, you don't have good control of your finances when that's happening. Your financial statements are wrong. Your internal financial statements are wrong. And that, you don't want that as a city, okay? So, and then when you need to have someone who can come in and make these adjusting journal entries for you, again, that won't be free. Someone can do that, but it won't be free. Someone will charge you to do that. But that is something as a city you have to do. It's just no other way. Like I said, we used to be able to kind of skirt that system a little bit by approvals and having somebody else look at the stuff, and it just doesn't work. The laws are tightening down on us. And so we can't continue to produce financial statements where we have to come in and make all of your, and it's, let me be clear here, you operate on a cash basis as a rule of thumb. So your staff does a fantastic job of bringing your revenue in, dispersing your revenue out, everything's in the right place. So that's not the problem. But on a cash basis, everything stops at year end. So if you get something on July 15th, that's a bill for last year, on a cash basis, that doesn't matter. We don't care about that. And on an accrual basis, which all governmental financial statements in Kentucky are yellow book or accrual financial basis, a bill that you get in July or maybe even in August, that's for work that Cardinal did in May, that goes on this year, so that becomes an accounts payable ledger. That makes sense. Your revenue that you get for, you have insurance premium tax? Yes, you do, okay. Subsidies. The revenue you get for insurance premium tax. You get that in July, August, and September. You get almost all of it in July and August. That was due and payable to the city of Walton on June 30th from the insurance companies. They pay it in July and August. So that all has to be a receivable, and so that gets put back into this period. So those adjustments need to be made at the end of the year. Someone needs to be making those adjustments. And again, that person really shouldn't. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions on that?
Is this something that should be done, right at the end of the year in preparation of the audit? So,
Absolutely.
I mean, besides keeping up with it throughout the year,
there's multiple ways of doing it, Mayor. Some cities do it every month. You can come in every month and adjust in and out. It's a little bit much. You don't have to do that. For the volume that you use, that's just your internal financial report. If you don't mind something sitting on your financial statements all year long, that because you have an accounts receivable that goes into your QuickBooks account, and it'll be sitting there as accounts receivable in July, August, September, October. It'll still be there in June, and then when your accountant finally comes in let's say August, backs it out, puts the new one in, and then that one sits it on. As long as you don't mind that, that's fine with me. Your internal financial statements, you can handle those however you want. But your external for reporting purposes, it should be adjusted once a month.
okay.
And the sooner the better. It's not practical really to do them in July. Probably August, early September, you can get most of it. Sometimes there's little stragglers that hang out there, little things that you can estimate or whatever. Usually August is, end of August is kind of a cold period.
Good.
Any questions on that? I know that's confusing, and I don't want to be too preachy, but you need to hear it from me. And it's not just me; it's any firm you hire should be giving you the same. In fact, if you hire somebody and they're not giving you this speech, you hired the wrong firm.
Council, any questions for Mr. Chamberlain? All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Thank you much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, moving on with city business, further business, resolution 2020-03, supporting House Bill 404, reorganizing the Kentucky retirement system and create an independent county employees retirement system, CERS, Board of Trustees. Reads, whereas the city of Walton, Kentucky has employees vested in the county employees retirement system, whereas employer contribution rates for the county employees retirement system continue to increase, putting a strain on municipal budgets. Whereas total assets of county employees retirement system are about $13.5 billion, and it is 76% of pension assets controlled by the Kentucky retirement systems. Whereas the current 17-member Kentucky Retirement Systems Board of Trustees only has 6 seats for county employees retirement system representatives. Whereas the Kentucky Retirement Systems Investment Committee has no county employees retirement system representatives, and the actuarial subcommittee has only 1 seat for a county employees retirement system representative. Whereas the Kentucky Retirement Systems earns investment income for the county employees retirement system below amounts earned by peer groups, and investment income is a vital component of improving the pensions system's funding level. Whereas a CERS Board of Trustees solely focused on investment decisions, actuarial data, and allocations of the county employee retirement system would ensure decisions made for the system are in its best interest. Whereas House Bill 484 creates a 9-member county employee retirement system board of trustees whose sole responsibility is the management of the county employees retirement system. And whereas it is in the best interest of the city of Walton, Kentucky and its employees that county employees retirement system functions in an affordable and actuarial sound manner. Now therefore it be resolved, that the City Council of the City of Walton, Kentucky supports House Bill 484, calls upon the General Assembly and legislators representing this community to pass the measure to reorganize the Kentucky retirement systems and create an independent county employee retirement system board of trustees. Can I get a motion to accept this resolution, please?
So moved.
Second.
Barb?
Yes.
Terry? Bobby?
Yes.
Rose?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Okay. Next up, the first reading of ordinance 2020-01 of the City of Walton, Kentucky, amending section 71.05 of the Walton Code of Ordinances in order to revise the speed limit to 30 miles per hour on Mullen Drive from its beginning at the intersection with Walton Nicholson Road, Route 16 through North Walton Commerce Park to the roundabout at approximately 184 Mullen Drive. Mike, do you need to go any further than that?
Yeah, I'll just summarize it. Currently, from Route 16, Walton Nicholson Pike, all the way through the industrial park and all the way through the North Walton Point subdivision is 20 miles per hour. And the request was made for the industrial part of the area there to be raised to 30 miles per hour. As you see, we have ordinances on the books that sets 20 miles per hour for all city streets. We've changed that on School Road, Stevenson Road, Old Beaver Road, and this proposal, as I indicated, would change the speed limit up to 30 miles an hour for that stretch only in the industrial part of it. So you typically vote on first reading, so.
Motion.
Second.
Barb,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
All right.
Next will be the first reading of ordinance 2020-02, City of Walton, Kentucky, amending ordinances 2019-07, 2019-12, and section 150.35, subsection D of the Walton Code of Ordinances in order to provide for late fees for non-payment of civil fines for violation of ordinances prohibiting parking in fire lanes. Mike, care to expand on that?
Yeah, again, by further summary, this would be Phase 3 of the fire lanes ordinances. We are having good luck with getting people to pay the fines, but there are a substantial number of people who are not paying fines. So what this would do is, in addition to the fines, would add late fees if the people do not pay. They have 7 days to pay the fine. If they do not pay it by the 14th day, a late fee of $10 will be added. If they go 7 more days, in other words, 21 days after the citation, it'd be $10 more. And then after that, for each additional 7 days, there would be a $10 late fee added. Likewise, if they do, that was all if they do not contest the citation and just flat out don't pay it. The other provision of the ordinance would be if it is contested and the fine is upheld by the board and they don't pay, a very similar structure would go into effect, that for every 7 days that they don't pay, there would be a $10 late fee added to it. There's a $500 cap on both of those. So, again, you all typically vote on first reading.
Motion.
Second.
Barb,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Okay. Right, moving on, council comments. Councilwoman Farrow, our newest member, Councilwoman Courtney, do you have anything?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
John used to talk a lot.
I'll get warmed up eventually.
Rose?
No. No.
Stephanie? Matt?
Nothing?
All right, only comments I have is wash your daggone hands. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to,
Second.
no.
I'm not sure what just happened there.
I don't know either.
One person motioning about another thing, one person motioning about something else.
Well, what-
Motion to enter executive session to discuss city personnel.
Second.
Okay, we need to add to that motion the exception to the Open Meetings Act that you would go under, and you mentioned personnel.
Yes.
That would be CARA 61.8101F.
61.810F,
1F.
1F.
That's your motion?
Yes.
Who seconded
Who
that?
first did,
Me.
who made the first motion?
Bobby.
Bobby,
Matt
and
seconded.
then Matt, okay. Barb,
Yes.
Terry,
Yes.
Bobby,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Matt.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen.